Grand Theft Auto San Andreas holds the #1 spot for being the best-selling PS2 game of all time. It was released to critical acclaim because of its huge, detailed open world that pushed the PS2 to its limits. But it's crazy to think that a game rated 18 plus was such a massive part of all our childhoods. I still remember playing San Andreas for the first time. I was at a friend's house before school, and I was blown away at how realistic this game was. That day I went home and begged to get it, but I didn't really play the game properly. In fact, I only completed this game for the first time back in 2014. As a kid, I spent most of my time in Los Santos, replaying the first 10 missions. I never really got to San Fierro or Los Venturas legitly because my child brain couldn't complete most of the missions.
All we had to do was follow the damn train, CJ!
So I chose to explore this incredible open world instead. I would use cheat codes and fly cars around the map. It was unbelievable how big and detailed this map was. I went from playing games that were level based, with each level being locked behind a loading screen, to playing this massive open world. And the map wasn't just big for the sake of being big. This map was so detailed. Each location had a different atmosphere and vibe to it, and there was so much to do. I vividly remember finding all these random activities and things to do every other day, and being blown away at how a game could be so realistic and have so many different things to do in it. And this was all without me leaving the bottom part of the map. GTA San Andreas to this day is one of my favourite games of all time. I still replay it every now and then, and I believe it's the most iconic game I have ever played. Let me explain why. Our story starts with the death of CJ's mother. His mother died in a drive-by shooting that was done by the Ballas in a green Sabre. Once hearing this, CJ decides to return to Los Santos. When CJ arrives in the city, the corrupt crash unit pull over his taxi and arrest him. The officers, Frank Tenpenny, Eddie Pawlowski and Jimmy Hernandez, steal CJ's belongings and blackmail him into working for them. They eventually let CJ go, but tell him they'll be in touch when they need him. CJ eventually makes his way back home to Grove Street. Here he is reunited with Big Smoke, and the pair head over to his mum's funeral. At the funeral, CJ reunites with his friends and family, but his brother Sweet wasn't too happy to see him, saying that CJ does nothing but run away, hinting at how he was responsible for their younger brother's death. This reunion, however, is interrupted by the Ballas doing a drive-by shooting on Smoke's car, and the gang then have to make it back to Grove Street on bikes. Once back, Carl begins working with Sweet, Smoke and Ryder to restore their gang's power in any way they can. During this time, CJ also meets OG Luke and Caesar, Kendall's new boyfriend. CJ does an array of tasks for all these people plus the corrupt crash unit. The gang's goal is to restore Grove Street's status and power, and they eventually make good progress by taking over Balla territory. With this newfound progress, Sweet decides to take Los Santos back from the Ballas. But before CJ heads over to help Sweet, Caesar takes him to a secret meeting point where they learn that Ryder and Big Smoke are working with Crash and the Ballas, and they possibly were involved in the death of CJ's mother, as they were seen with the green Sabre that was involved in the drive-by. In complete shock, CJ realizes that Sweet was probably set up and rushes over to help him. When he gets there, CJ wipes the Ballas and the police arrive on the scene to arrest both brothers. Except while Sweet gets thrown in prison, CJ gets escorted to the small town of Angel Pine in the countryside. Here, Tenpenny warns CJ not to go back to Los Santos, and again blackmails him, saying that if he doesn't comply with their wishes, Sweet will suffer in prison. So CJ carries out Tenpenny's wish and completes a few tasks for him. Tenpenny then asks Carl to buy weed from the Truth so that he can plant it on the DA later in San Fierro. So Carl tries to make the money to do so as fast as possible. Here's where Caesar introduces CJ to his cousin Catalina. The pair rob everything you can think of in an attempt to make more money. They also end up in a romantic relationship despite it being incredibly toxic, and they eventually break up, I think.
Hey, what's up? Hello?
Yes, Claude! Faster, harder! Deeper! Oh, yes! Yes, yes!
Catalina, you sick. Get help.
And you, Carl, you are jealous!
CJ then enters into a few races to earn more money. And here's where he meets Woozy, the blind leader of the Mountain Cloud Boys. The pair hit it off and eventually end up working with each other later on. In the races, CJ beats Catalina's new boyfriend Claude and wins his garage up in San Fierro. This garage is where the gang ends up running away to after Tenpenny tips the police off about Truth's weed farm. Once in San Fierro, CJ realizes the garage is derelict, but Kendall calms him down and tells him that they can turn it into something. So CJ goes out and recruits two mechanics, Dwayne and Jethro, and an electronics expert, Zero. And Zero gives Carl one of the worst missions in GTA history. Tenpenny then tells Carl it's time to plant the weed he acquired from the truth in the DA's car, so Carl does so, and the DA gets arrested. Shortly after this, Tenpenny and Pulaski pay Carl a surprise visit, this time demanding that he follows and kills a reporter who had been investigating them back in Los Santos. Caesar then calls CJ to inform him of Ebola's car heading towards the countryside. They follow it to Angel Pine, and here's when they learn that Ryder and the Ballas are meeting Jizzy B, Thibaut Mendez, and Mike Torino, who are the leaders of the local syndicate, an organisation that is supplying drugs to Big Smoke, Ryder, and the Ballas. In shock, Carl then decides to take them all out, starting with Jizzy, then Thibaut Mendez, Ryder, and then finally Mike Torino. After killing the syndicate, CJ then blows up the crack factory that was supplying drugs to Big Smoke. But not long after this, CJ gets a strange call and is told to come to a ranch. Carl heads out there, does a few missions, and then learns that the suspicious caller was Mike Torino, who somehow didn't die in the helicopter explosion. Torino then informs Carl that he's a government agent and can help get Sweet out of prison sooner if CJ does a few missions for him. So CJ complies. He buys an airstrip and undergoes a series of missions for Torino. But one day, whilst at the airstrip, the Truth meets Carl and asks him to sneak into Area 69, where CJ steals him a jetpack. The Truth then asks Carl to use this jetpack to steal a mysterious green substance from a military train. CJ eventually brings it back to the Truth, who lets Carl keep the jetpack in return. Then CJ gets a call from Woozy, telling him that he's opened a casino in Las Venturas and that he needs to come see him. So Carl heads over. Here Woozy tells Carl that he's giving him a stake in the casino, but they are struggling as the opposing gangs and casinos are messing with their business. So the pair decides to show them that they are not to be messed with. CJ heads out and does a few missions to sabotage the opposing gangs and eventually decides to plan a heist to rob their casino. In the middle of this, Truth asks Carl to go find his friends, Kent Paul and Magger, out in the desert after a crazy night. CJ then brings them back to their hotel, and it turns out they're staying at the opposing gang's casino, and here CJ gets an opportunity to get some inside information. He is introduced to Ken Rosenberg, who's a friend of Kent's. Ken eventually leads him to meet the leader of the Leone family, Salvatore. CJ decides to gain his trust by carrying out a few missions for him, but Salvatore calls for Ken, Kent and Magger to be killed as they have failed him. However, CJ pretends to kill him and the trio flee out of the state. Salvatore is incredibly impressed by CJ, which will make the gang's heist on the casino a lot easier. But whilst in Venturas, CJ meets Mad Dog, who is on drugs and has become suicidal after losing his career and manager. CJ saves him and brings him to a rehab clinic, but shortly after, CJ gets a phone call from Tenpenny telling him to come meet him. In a final attempt to cover up his mess, Tenpenny has CJ kill a DA and retrieve the information that he had on Tenpenny's work. So CJ does this and is instructed to bring the documents to a ghost town in the middle of the desert. Here, Tenpenny leaves Pulaski to kill and bury CJ along with Hernandez, except Hernandez isn't dead yet and ends up saving CJ's life, which allows CJ to chase and kill Pulaski. CJ then returns to Las Venturas to complete the heist on their rival's casino after gaining Salvatore's trust. The team pull off the heist successfully and Salvatore is rightfully pissed, but the gang return back to their casino to get to work. Not long after, Mad Dog, after returning from rehab, visits CJ in the casino and asks him to become his manager and help restore his career. CJ agrees and the team set out to take back his mansion in Vinewood. Once they have reclaimed the mansion, they then get revenge on OG Luke and restore Mad Dog's career. Then Torino somehow finds CJ again and has him do 2 final missions. CJ has to steal a jet and blow up naval ships. Then finally, his last mission is to collect his brother from prison. CJ heads down to the precinct and picks up Sweet. However, Sweet is not happy with Carl's new life. He says that CJ has abandoned the hood and neglected the gang. To prove his loyalty, CJ starts to reclaim the city from the rival gangs, and once he has reclaimed enough territory, Sweet finds out where Big Smoke is hiding. Then CJ storms through his crack factory and eventually kills his childhood friend, leaving only Tenpenny. CJ and Sweet chase Tenpenny through the streets of Los Santos, and eventually Tenpenny loses control of his truck and kills himself in the crash. And I think CJ wraps it up best.
See you around, officer.
I think this story is fantastic. CJ feels like he is constantly trying to make up for a mistake he made, which we eventually learned that it was related to his brother's death. The twist of Big Smoke and Ryder being the bad guys was unexpected during my first playthrough, but when you replay it now, you see a trail of breadcrumbs in the beginning hinting at Big Smoke being unloyal. Like how Crash are always at his house, how Big Smoke got enough money to move out of the Grove into Balla territory, and how he takes forever to order his meal right before the gang get caught in a drive-by. The characters you meet throughout San Andreas Andreas are all memorable, and I quite like the weirder characters like Woozie, who is blind and can somehow drive a car, Catalina, who just torments CJ all game, The Truth, who is a conspiracy nutjob but yet sometimes is proven to be right, and my particular favourite, Mike Torino, who defies death, knows everything about everyone, and is always able to talk to CJ no matter where he is. CJ's description of him is very fitting.
Man, he like the devil.
The characters and story of San Andreas are incredibly detailed, but this detail is a result of Rockstar developing such an innovative game. Rockstar started the development of San Andreas right after the release of Grand Theft Auto Vice City at the end of 2002. And it is said they took just under 2 years to develop this game. Executive producer Sam Houser said that the members of the team put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves to ensure that they would do everything possible to exceed people's expectations. Plus, this game was rumoured to have twice the budget of Vice City, with $10 million. Rockstar did a lot of work to replicate the different cities in the game. They had numerous teams in California, and they were all equipped with a camera. Each team went to a different city from the game, taking multiple photos of various locations. Everything from the fancy casinos in Las Vegas to the heart of LA's gang territory. Rockstar reportedly photographed every inch of the state. As a result of all this work, Rockstar created an immersive world by nailing the atmosphere of a 1990s California. From the get-go, Grove Street and Los Santos looked amazing. Based off the city of Los Angeles, every area of Los Santos felt different and had different NPCs and weather. Then you had the countryside, which honestly gave me nightmares. You drive out west, see some freaky looking hillbillies, and then a lightning storm would hit. It'd get dark and foggy, and you swear you saw something in the distance. Plus, it didn't help that you kept watching GTA ghost stories and Bigfoot videos earlier on YouTube. Then you'd head north to San Fierro, a different looking city to LS. This place is based off San Francisco, and here you'd find different gangs, the tram, and see the famous Golden Gate Bridge. Then you crossed the bridge to the desert, and it was much like the countryside, creepy. You had ghost towns and an entire secret government facility based off Area 51. Again, you had different weather like sandstorms and diners referencing aliens. Then you'd head over to the single city sitting alone in the desert, Las Venturas. This city is based off Las Vegas. It has the strip with dazzling lights and crazy casinos. Every single corner of this map was different. It wasn't just big for the sake of being big. It was detailed, and every state had its own atmosphere. In fact, this map was so immersive and felt so real that there were conspiracy theories being spread online about it. There were stories of Bigfoot being in the countryside and aliens being in the desert. Rockstar created a truly massive, detailed and immersive world that pushed the PS2 to its limits. Just like the story and world of San Andreas, the gameplay of this game was groundbreaking. GTA San Andreas implemented RPG mechanics into the series. If you didn't eat, CJ would go hungry and lose weight and stamina. You can increase things like body fat, muscles, stamina, sex appeal, and weapon skill by doing things like eating, working out, getting tattoos, and shooting. GTA San Andreas brought a huge catalogue of customization that the series had never seen before. There were also so many unique vehicles in this game. You could fly a jet, drive a tank, a boat, a helicopter, ride a go-kart, hovercraft, and even a jetpack. There were so many random arcade games and mini games that CJ could partake in. I just remember being a kid and finding something new every week I played this game. I was blown away at how this game would have so many random things in hidden places. It was so realistic. Playing this game felt like I was playing in real life, with no rules and cheat codes. Rockstar poured their blood, sweat and tears into this game, and it shows. This was not even close to a normal PS2 game at the time. This is one of the few, if not only, game you can play 20 years later and it still feels modern. In my opinion, this game is iconic, and it became more than just a game. This game was woven into pop culture, and it's so popular it's still referenced in memes to this day. The iconicness of GTA San Andreas was inevitable, and it's all because of the detail Rockstar poured into the story, characters, development, map, and gameplay. If you want to hear about another one of Rockstar's incredible GTA titles, click a video on screen. Thanks for watching.